Well, listen, um, I'm Pastor Finace Bush, and this for me is a very, very, very important, special, and significant podcast. I'll tell you why. I've been working on this young man here for several months now. We're in the process of trying to bring the collectives of our minds together so that we can actually write a book. And he and I have been the best of friends now, somewhere upward 6 to 8 years. And I tell you the truth, we met under some strange circumstances. And he keeps me laughing. I keep him alive. But listen, no finer man, no finer gentleman, no more significant or special person than the Honorable John Cates. And I am so elated to have this privilege and opportunity to share my bestest friend with you all, our listening audience, because this man really has something to say. Not only does he keep me laughing, but he helps me to dig down. You know, there's a process that we use when you're trying to get things out of the sea. It's called dredging. They dredge the bottom. Well, he's really the kind of character that you want to dredge because he has a lot of resourceful information that you want to sit back and listen to. All right. Our gift, my brother and friend, the Honorable John Cates. John, before you start talking, would you please say something to our audience? Share something about yourself.
There's some nice words here. Thank you.
You're
I
so
appreciate
welcome.
it. I don't think I've ever been referred to as honorable before. Maybe when I joined the Coast Guard.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a word. I'm not a judge, you know. I could be, but I'm smart enough not to be.
I hear you. I hear you.
But I'm glad to be here. You did drag me here, by the way.
I did drag you. I drag him here, I'm telling you.
I tried to find an excuse today not to come, but I said, I ran everybody off the road getting here, and you're late. Is that good enough?
John, how old are you now, John? You are
I'll be 87 next month.
87 next month. So, you know, I've been actually, and you heard this when we first met and start talking and hanging out and eating lunch and breakfast and dinner and all that other good stuff together. You know, at age 17, they used to call me the old man because all of my friends, for a while there, was somewhere between 60 and 70 years old. Isn't that something? And all of my best friends. And then as I have grown up and matured, I find myself still fascinated and surrounded by special people like yourself, honorable men like yourself. That's the truth. Men and women have been, the aged have been my good friends. And so I'm always delighted to talk about you in your absence, in your presence. My grandchildren know you quite well, my wife, family, my son, everybody. So y'all sit back. There's a lot that this man has to share. We're going to get it out of him today. And so one of the reasons I have you here today, we got several things we can talk about. But one reason we have you here with us today is so we can talk about the leveraging advantage or advantages to owning real estate. And there are 4 primary leverages. And when you first started talking to me about this, one of the things you said is that most people really don't understand why this is so important. And so if you would you first tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate and where you are now as a realtor or broker?
Well, 50 years ago, I decided to get in the real estate business. I was trying to make a decision. I just bought a house from I found out he was a real estate broker, but he was a builder also. And he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Somebody's tried to hire me to sell chemicals at a sewer plant." He said, "You buy boots on and wait out there to talk to people." I said, "No, sir, I'm not doing that." Wow. And I said, what else you thinking about? And he said, they named a couple of things. And I said, my problem, I don't do well with bosses. I'm the boss.
Okay, that's good.
and it's kind of a snotty way to say it, but I am me. Yeah, I don't bend very well. Okay. And I've had bosses, and I said, you're going to fire me? And they said, if you don't change, I said, well, I'm not going to change.
Wow.
You hired me because of who I am. So now I got to change to be who you want me to be?
Wow.
No, it won't happen. And then he said, well, I'll send somebody up there and talk to you. And I said, it won't do any good.
About changing, huh?
Yeah, I'm not
John,
change.
you know what's notable about what you're saying already, and this is not our focus, but this is a primary part of why you have become a successful hand as a man in what you do. You sound to be someone who believed in yourself, and you were not going to just be jerked around by any personality just because people wanted to manage your life. You wanted to hold the reins to your own life. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, I can change if somebody corrects me and says, you got a nasty vocabulary, and I do sometimes. Okay. And I can say, I appreciate you saying that. I'll watch my language. Mm-hmm. And then I can do those things. But if you want me to be unethical, which is part of that conversation a while ago, was wanting me to do certain things the wrong way, and I said, no. You know, I was interviewed by Newsweek, and I told them the truth, and I almost got fired over it. I said, it's a crooked business, but I'm trying to make it honest.
Wow.
And my boss read the Newsweek magazine, and, did you say that? I said, well, sure, I said it. You know it. It's a crooked business.
It's a crooked business.
That's it. Period. It's crooked. And I said, you need to get rid of all your crooks. Mm. And I'm firing them as fast as I can. And you hiring them back.
Wow.
Which makes you wonder. So you're going to fire me? Fire me. If not, leave me alone. I'm making money for you.
Wow.
And
so
that's
did
what
he
that
fire
was. Yeah, I made vice president and president of the company in 3 weeks. They didn't have anybody else but me that could speak up. I said, I am not going to apologize for being honest. And I'm not going to wear it like a halo either. You know, I'm just going to be me. And you try to get me to be something else, you got the wrong guy.
Wow.
So you should have known that before you hired me.
Man, I tell you what, John, if we weren't focused on some specific objectives today, we would be talking right there. I'm going to have you back, and we're going to deal with that, because a lot of people, especially men, suffer in their personality, not having self-gravity, not having self-belief, not having self-confidence, self-assurance, not having a self-concept ability. And as a result of that, they have low self-esteem when it comes down to being challenged by those who sound like the wolves and sound like the lions and sound like the owners. And they give or they yield the ownership of their essence to people that have no more business owning them than they do themselves. They usually give themselves to people who really don't own themselves. They just sound good.
You've got to say no.
And you've got to say no.
You've got to say no. And you've got to say yes to yourself when it's time to change. And, you know, I know my shortcomings, and one of them just told you is my vocabulary. Yeah. and my bluntness sometimes. But if I only am blunt if I have to be blunt.
Gotcha.
And don't BS me.
Gotcha.
You know, I don't go for it, and no need us pretending that I'm going to go for it. So
right.
Stop your stuff. If you told me 3 lies in a row, our friendship's over. Mm. And it's over.
I got
and
you.
he said, can I take you to lunch? I said, you're wasting your money. Mm. And it's over.
Wow.
And I've got that in my last 15 years or so. But, okay. You know, I'm just tired of it. And I just, you know, I like you. I love you.
Yeah.
And I love certain other people, and other people I can't stand, and I'm just not going to be around them. Gotcha. I don't need them, you know, to make a living.
Yeah.
And so I think the older you get, the more wiser maybe you get.
Right.
I'm not sure about that sometimes, you
Yeah,
know.
sometimes.
You forget your name, you know.
Yeah. The price of experience is sometimes overrated. One of the things I think my dad used to say, or one of his brothers used to say, was that usually by the time someone realizes the importance of experience, they've transpired and it is there for someone else to not use.
Yeah, I like Einstein's statement, doing the same thing over and over again is a sign of being an idiot.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's what he said.
I don't know if that's exactly what
Well,
he said it.
He said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting something different.
Yeah, that's basically the same
Yeah,
thing.
it's the
Just,
same
you know,
thing. Yeah.
and I don't expect anything from anybody other than give them a fair deal on real estate, which is what I know best, and I know money because I've been a stockbroker and I've been in the business planning with the insurance field before I got to any of these deals.
So you're a real estate broker, but you've been a stockbroker.
Stockbroker, and I was with the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance as an estate planner.
As an estate planner.
That's how I started my sales career.
Okay.
With Northwestern Mutual, and then I got stupid and become a stockbroker, and I went to New York and went through the stockbroker school and all the other courses, and came back, and I realized that we're at the opposite end of being honest.
Okay.
And the companies tell you to sell a stock, like Ford Motors. I'm not picking on Ford. I drive a Ford.
Gotcha.
But they say, well, sell Ford. Meanwhile, they have bought the stock in Ford wholesale. The big company will buy a Ford stock selling at 50 on the street, and they buy it at $45. And then they tell you, buy order, sell Ford at 50. So they're making a $5 per share profit on misinformation. And when I caught on to it, I said, I'm through here.
Okay.
And that's how I changed careers. I said, I'm through. And my biggest account came in and said, would you be offended if I become a stockbroker? That's when they call people stockbrokers. And I said, no, why would I? He said, well, you're losing your biggest account. I said, well, we're not going to lose our friendship.
Wow.
And he said, I don't understand. Why would you not be upset? I said, because I quit. I'm quitting here. As soon as I make number one in this company, I'm quitting. He said, you're going to quit? I said, yes, sir. He said, why? I said, it's a crooked business. And he said, I've never heard that before. But he decided not to be a stockbroker on that very word. I said, I'm quitting. And then all of a sudden, my phone rings up 30 minutes later. And he said, this is Bill Phillips. I said, yes, sir. He said, I heard you wanted to come to work for me. I said, no, sir, I haven't said that. I said, you must have got that from your brother. I told him I was quitting being a stockbroker. And he said, well, do you want to work for me or not? And that's when I became president of a company and a vice president of another company in 3 weeks. So
wow.
That's how I made a career change.
So you became president of the company in 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Wow. And then you quit.
Well, I quit a couple of years later.
I
formed my own company and put him out of business because he was still crooked.
He was still crooked.
Yeah, wow. My company was
Sounds like integrity has been a very distinguishable part of your character for a long time, even though you always admit to being sometimes having a
little wild, yeah.
Getting a little wild, and you had a bad temper.
Yeah.
You were easy to provoke to fight because you used to love to fight. I mean,
no.
Yeah, John, you used to love to fight. Now
I like to talk about it, but I don't do it. Because you can't win them all. I just pick the ones I can win.
You love to arm wrestle and fight.
Oh, I used to arm wrestle. I was good at it.
He was a big man.
For money.
Yeah.
I'd arm wrestle for money. Right hand, I'd free, left hand down.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That was fun, too.
Gotcha.
I wrestled my son's buddies.
But integrity has been a tremendous part of your character. Well, that's a great leverage to have.
I
the
think
ability
I got
to,
that from my father. You know, he was a kind of a two-faced guy, if he's listening in heaven or hell, wherever he is. But
Wait a minute, John. You said wherever your dad is at.
well, I don't know where he is. I don't know. And
Okay.
but if I get to heaven, I want to look him up. If I
Okay.
get to hell, I don't want to see him. But anyway, he was an honest man. But at some things he did wrong, but he couldn't admit it. And I saw that as a flaw in a person. And maybe that's where I got cocky about being honest.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
really headstrong about being honest.
Yeah,
with
I do. And I'm not going to do it.
That happens.
I think you should. I don't think you need to wear it as much as some people call it spiritual. Mm-hmm. I think you need to wear it to be a man. Mm-hmm. Or a woman.
Gotcha.
I mean, if you be a person of integrity.
Yeah.
Somebody says, do I look good in this? And I said, nobody but a perfect figure can look in that dress. I told my wife that last night.
On the television, especially on the social media streams and YouTube, namely, where you got all of these gurus that's come up all of a sudden, and they're telling us it's not wise to buy a house. You're better off, depending upon your age, to just rent. Then some are coming on right behind them and saying you need to own your house. Some are saying that you need to do a multiplicity of things with the purchasing or the ownership side, but none are just being really concrete about what is most important. And so today you're going to tell us why there are 4 leveraging advantages to owning real estate.
Well, the first one is leverage.
Okay.
And
Talk
it's
to me about
very pure. You can buy a home, sometimes for $0 down.
Okay.
But let's use 10% because it's easy math. 10%, you buy a $200,000 house. And even if you bought it right now, with the inflation going up and some other things, 5 years from now, you'll be tickled to death you bought the house.
Okay.
So $200,000 based on 5% cumulative increases, like in Columbia County and North Augusta and some other areas we've talked about. And, then you got a house worth $250 maybe, and but it doesn't go down. Mm-hmm. I've never seen a house go down unless you're stupid enough to buy on top of the market.
Yeah.
And that's what these gurus are saying right now. But there is no top. I mean, when I bought my house, I paid top price. The guy would not sell it any cheaper. I made a lower offer, being a realtor. Okay. And he said no. They were getting a divorce and they were dividing up the money. And I knew the house was worth it. And so I bought it. And now it's several $100,000 more than I paid for it. And I still don't have any intentions of selling it. Right. You know, I'm going to probably sell it. Or my wife would sell it if I died first, you know. She don't have to, but it's still a good investment. So the leverage of it is you can control. I'll use a $200,000 house. Okay. You can't hardly buy one in Columbia County. No, yeah, but just say $200,000, and the math's easy. And 10% of $200,000 is $20,000. Okay. So you put $20,000 down on the house, and there you are, closing costs on top of that. You got to pay the attorney and all kind of. But usually the seller pays some of those fees. So just use $20,000. So you live there 1 year. 5% of what? Is it 5% of 20,000 or is it 5% of 200,000? So you sit there and you got $20,000 invested in a house. It's going up 5% in value, which is $10,000. So you got half your money back already. Mm-hmm. Theoretically, you could sell it. So the next year you get the other half back. So you now
appreciated.
Appreciation. Mm-hmm. So in the 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year, you're just counting your money. And then there's bigger things than that. If you're smart or learn to be smart, then you can sit there and say, you know, I got the equity in my house. Why don't I cash out some of this equity and buy some income-producing real estate? So you buy a house, and then some of these people call it swapping or whatever they call it. And I don't believe in that personally, but they make money. But I just don't have an interest in doing it. There's nothing ethical or unethical about it. It's just I don't care anything about paying a painter, paying some carpenter to come fix my house up. And I'm not going to do it myself either. I'm not a carpenter, not a painter. And but there is good money in flipping the houses, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. And I just don't do it.
Okay.
You know, but owning the house is probably the smartest thing you could possibly do. My son bought a house, $300-something thousand out of the box. I said, you know, I don't think that was a smart idea. If he's listening to this, he'll catch on because I told him.
Okay.
But I didn't say don't do it. And then, so they did it. And but they got, I think, a $3,000 house payment per month. And he's making good money, and she's wanting to get in the real estate business with me, and she's out trying to sell a house or two. But that's not going to get it. You got to make some good money to cough up $3,000.
Yeah, got to stay on it.
So but if they do it, that's fine, because if they hang on to that house, it's probably 5% of 300,000 is 15,000. 15,000 divided by 12, most of the payments go in there. So when you do the math on the house, if it's a $3,000 house payment and a 10%, excuse me, a 7% interest is what's going on right now, then so much of that 3,000 would go to the reducing your mortgage. That's a form of forced savings, because now you got a house worth $20,000 more than you paid for it, equity, and then plus the $20,000 you put in it. So now you got $40,000. Then you got a house payment, and you make 3,000 times 12, $36,000, and part of that $36,000 reduced your mortgage. So that's your equity too. It goes over and you stack it over there. And so you got appreciation, and you got the equity buildup in your payments. So it's not rent, it's a house payment.
Okay.
And so, and it gets better every year.
It's better every year.
And then you can also, when the interest rate changes, if it does, down to 5% or 3%, you can go refinance, and you can even take that equity out, some of it out, and you can buy of an income producing property, and that starts the game all over again. Right. You buy something for $5,000 down or $10,000 down, and it goes up 5% of what you paid for it. You pay $100,000 for the house. 5% of $100,000 is $5,000. Your money back the first year. And that's the game. There is no downside of buying real estate other than stupidity.
No downside to buying real estate other than stupidity.
Well, buying the wrong property, yeah. If you buy in the wrong neighborhood, or if you pay too much for the property in the first place. Okay. And again, to pat a realtor on the head, I don't sell houses, by the way, so it's not me. But if you got an honest realtor and they say, this is not the right neighborhood. It has nothing to do with, it just, there's no homeowner association. And they say,
no homeowners association.
Yeah.
That's
they say, well, I don't want a homeowner association. I say, yeah, you do. Once they park about 5 cars in your front yard, okay, you'll want a homeowner association.
You know, we're going to start from right there. Hold it right there, because in just a few minutes we're coming back. And, you know, I just heard something that I've never even thought about, but again, that's why you want to talk to someone who is enlightened, who understands the nuance of business associated with the real estate market altogether. And so in just a few minutes, we're going to return, and I want John to further get into this thing about the need for a homeowners association where you're purchasing your property, especially, I think, residential, where you're planning on living at mainly, right? But we'll be back in just a moment. Again, I'm here, Pastor Bush, the Honorable John Capes. We'll be back in just a moment.